Hey, how's it going? I rode my Royal Enfield Scram 411 motorcycle for 20,000 miles, and I also got 500 subscribers. You need 500 subscribers in order to make money on YouTube. That's one of the things that you need, and I got that. I got 500 subscribers, and I rode 20,000 miles on the Royal Enfield. Luckily I got 20,000 miles right at the Golden Gate Bridge, so I was able to film that a little. And I've got all my stories about what happened with the motorcycle. Right off the bat, I didn't put the bike down. I didn't crash the motorcycle. So I don't have a lot of stories about what happens to the bike when you put it down. I can tell you though that it's got these two plastic bumpers on the side of the bike, and those get scratched up pretty easy if the bike goes down. So if you drop the bike, one thing I can tell you is that, yeah, there's these bumpers, and they get they're designed to get scratched up if they touch the ground. So my motorcycle's an awesome color. It's black with San Francisco 49er football red and gold stripes on the bike. It's a pretty awesome color. I didn't leave it parked in San Francisco at night near bars or anything like that. And that could explain why I still have the bike. Bikes do get taken from people in San Francisco, but I still have mine. What I can tell you about the bike, it's different from other bikes in a lot of ways. It's called the Himalayan, and the Scram and the Himalayan are the same thing. The Himalayan has got the windshield, it's got a smaller wheel on the front, and it's got some luggage racks kind of like on the front and on the back of the bike that the Scram doesn't have. The Scram does have a luggage rack on the back that you could use for delivering Uber Eats and DoorDash and stuff like that. I didn't use my bike for that, but it definitely could happen. It's a good bike for the city. The Scram is designed for the city, and it's got some features to it which are an advantage. For instance, without the windshield on the front of the Scram, you've got a lot of visibility. The stance on the bike is really tall. It's kind of like riding a little horse. You know, you're up high, and you can see above the cars around you. You've got a lot of a clear view just all around you. Your perspective and you're able to look all around you. You can see cars coming at you. You can see cars coming from the sides and what have you. There's not a lot of surprises, and you can go pretty fast, splitting lanes and cutting corners and whatnot, because you have such a clear view of what's going on around you. I only wear this half helmet. This is the Crazy Al's half helmet. This is what I wear. I got these little goggles off of Amazon. They're double layered so they don't get fogged up. They've got plastic on the front and then a separate plastic screen on the back, and that prevents them from getting condensation, getting fogged up. I'm using the Fox gloves, okay? And I use the Houdini. I wear a fleece, this is a fleece from the East Coast. And this is the Houdini windbreaker jacket. This is what I wear to block the wind. It allows me to be warm while the wind is cut by this windbreaker. Now that's not a lot of armor. I'm not wearing a lot of protection. However, I'm only traveling a short distance. It takes me about 25 minutes to get to work. I've had the bike for maybe 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years. And so I put 20,000 miles on it in 3 years, so I don't travel far. I go to the beach, I go to work, and I'm relatively careful. The bike only goes 70 miles an hour, so you're not going to get speeding tickets on the highway for speeding because it only goes 70. If you think of the word Himalayan, and you think of the Himalayas are mountain highways that are long, and sometimes you're going uphill for long periods of time with the wind blowing against you, and it's cold. It may be like snow. Okay, and everything about the Himalayan is for that kind of situation. It goes about 65 miles an hour or 70 uphill against the wind on the highway for long distances. Okay, that's really where the bike shines. So two of the features that make the bike really unique is that it looks like a 700cc bike or maybe a 1000cc bike, but it's only a 400. And part of the issue is that, yeah, maybe there's enough under the hood to make it a 700cc bike, but they've tinkered with the torque and they've arranged the torque of the engine so that it only goes about 70 miles an hour. And that allows you to go, 65, 70 uphill in extremely difficult conditions. You normally would need like a 1000cc bike to go that fast uphill with like snow and wind blowing against you for that long, right? But the 400cc is configured with a ton of torque to allow you to go uphill fast for like long distances. For off-roading, it's recommended to just put the bike in second and just let it roll along in second gear and just leave it in second. Just aim the bike for some dirt that doesn't look like pebbles, doesn't look like sand, doesn't look like boulders. Just look for some flat, dry dirt and just aim the front wheel at that and just leave it in second and let it roll along 25, 30 miles an hour. Second gear doesn't start up too quick, so you're not going to spin out the wheel. You're going to get a nice rolling start, and you're not going to go too fast. You're not going to eat it on the dirt going too fast. So the bike goes about 25, 30 on dirt. It goes good, 65 miles an hour uphill in the mountains on the highway. And that's really what it does. The engine is an air-cooled engine. So the cold wind of the Himalayas has to be blowing against that engine to keep it cool. And as a result, I think personally the engine burns up oil a lot. So for me, the bike usually sounds dry. It usually sounds like it needs oil. The engine runs hot. It evaporates the oil pretty easy. It seems like it constantly needs oil. At least that's what it seems like to me. Also, it seems like the oil reserve, the reserve for the oil inside the engine is so big that the amount of oil you can put in there is a lot. I used to have a Suzuki DR200 and you couldn't put oil in that bike. If you put too much oil in there, it would prevent air from getting into the engine, and it would leave like one of those tracers, like one of those trails of mist behind the bike. And people could see where you had been riding the bike because you would leave a trail of white smoke above the road behind the bike everywhere you go. You have to not put oil in it, and that allows more air to get into the engine and allows the bike to ride smoother and faster with more air and more energy. I think the same thing is true with the Himalayan. The bike does ride good. It's really responsive with less oil, less gas and oil means less weight, less fluids in there, more air, more responsiveness. The bike is running faster, better. But the bike does have a tendency to sound like it's dry, and I did blow up the engine at least one time. So now I want to get into like the cost of the bike. So, this bike can sell for like $2,500. I bought mine for $3,000. And then I took out a lien on the bike, and I was paying $100 a month, after that. So it was $3,000 plus $100 a month. About 2.5 years later, I got in touch with Freedom Road, who were handling the lien, and I thought, I've been paying $100 on this bike for a while. The bike should almost be paid for. I could call them up and just pay them like $400, maybe $700, because I only owed them $1,500, and it had been like 2.5 years. I bought the bike for $550 and paid $3. That means $1,500, $1,500 needed to be paid. It had been like 2 years. I had been paying $100 a month. I thought, well, it should be paid. What's going on? So I called Freedom Road, and they said, oh, the $100 that you've been paying is less than the minimum. So the price has actually gone up. You started off owing us $1,500, but now you owe us $3,000. So I paid $3,000 for the bike, and then 2 years later, I paid like another $3,000, and now I own the bike. So it costs $6,000. The chain on the bike, because of all the torque on the engine, the chain can get stretched out. And as the chain is going into the sprocket, the box where the sprocket is at, it can bounce around inside of that box so much that it sounds like there's tennis balls like bouncing around in there, or maybe gravel rocks or something are bouncing around in there. So I ended up having to get a chain to put in there, a better chain that doesn't get as stretched out, and that costs $1,000. So that, I paid $6,000 for the bike. Some people only paid $2,500. I paid $6,000 plus $1,000 for the chain. That's $7,000. I replaced the rear wheel like 3 or 4 times, and the front wheel one time. I had them look at the headlight. The low beam is good. It shines down on the road and gives you a lot of view of what you're doing, but the high beam kind of shoots too far in front. Doesn't do a lot. The high beam doesn't really help you ride the bike. The low beam is good, but not so much the high beam. I had them, I had the mechanics look at the bike several different ways. So meaning that I took the bike into the shop, 4 times. And so I thought there would be no issue with the bike, but the bike burns up oil so quick that I blew up the engine. Even after taking the bike to the shop 4 times, switching out the tires multiple times, the chain, having them look at the headlight, etc., the engine still exploded. So I hadn't really been putting a lot of oil in it. I just running the bike. I didn't think there was any issue. I thought that the mechanic could do that. I think 3,000 miles came by. I knew I needed an oil change every 3,000 miles. It had been like maybe 4,000 miles and the engine exploded. Okay, and I thought there would be enough oil in there. There wasn't. It needs more oil. The amount of oil you can put in this bike is a lot, like 3 quarts or something. So when I blew up that engine, that was another 1,500. So now we're talking more like 10,000. The Scram 411, I rode it for 20,000 miles and it was fine. I had a good time riding it. Yeah, plenty went wrong with the bike, but this is one of the most inexpensive bikes out there, and it's a really reliable, fun bike. It doesn't go fast, but it definitely rides hard. When I'm on the freeway in bad weather with the wind blowing, the bike runs really, really hard, and it's just fun to ride. In the city as well. As far as the bike being easy to ride, I would say no, it's not super easy to ride. I have personally gotten really used to the bike. I've been riding it for 20,000 miles, so for me, it's very fluid. But I would say it took me like maybe 5,000 miles before I really started feeling comfortable. I definitely felt a little nervous. Like within the first 2,000 miles, I felt pretty nervous. It was kind of difficult. I went off-road one time. I was on a coastal highway that was very twisty turny, and I wasn't able to make a turn, and my bike just went onto the dirt one day. I didn't fall or anything, but it was a little sketchy. So the bike takes a little bit of time to learn how to ride. It is kind of a big bike with a lot of torque. It kind of has, it does its own thing. You got to let it do its own thing. One more pro tip that I would share with you guys is that the dashboard on the Himalayan is not fancy. It only has one light, which is the engine light. When you see that engine light, start putting oil in the bike. The bike needs oil all of the time. If the bike sounds dry, it needs oil. If you see that engine light, just put in the oil. You can turn the engine light off by turning the bike on and off like 3 times, and the engine light will just turn off, which is what I was doing, but the engine exploded. Okay, so when you see that engine light, that basically is the oil light. Just put oil in the bike every time you see that light. The one other story that I would tell you is that there was a day when I was riding the motorcycle in the rain, and I came across a tree that had fallen on the road. I used to have a Suzuki DR200, which is a really nimble little bike, and hopping over that tree would be no issue. So since the Scram, is a much bigger bike, but it does have a skid plate on the bottom of the engine. It's got this huge, awesome plate that makes it look like there's no issue. You could bump into rocks or trees or whatever, and the bike will be fine. So I just went for it, and I popped my front tire over the tree, and then the back tire just couldn't get over the tree. And I was gunning it and revving the engine, and the rear tire was just spinning. It was hitting the tree, and the tree was wet. The tire was spinning against the tree, and eventually the engine light came on because, the cold wind of the Himalayas needs to be blowing against that engine in order to keep the engine cool, or the engine light is going to come on. So the wind has to be blowing on the engine to keep it cool. If you get stuck in the mud or stuck in the sand and you're revving the engine and trying to get the bike out of there by running the engine and spinning the wheel, the engine light will turn on and the engine can actually explode.